All right, here we are. Hello, hello, back again. For our listeners, welcome back to Influential Dental. I'm Julieanne O'Connor. I'm an influence coach, helping high achieving professionals in the dental space to leverage their influence and take back their quality of life. And I'm here with my co-host, Michael Keeter, who has a long history in the dental space as well. And we have a very exciting guest today on our show, somebody who's not really that easy to, nail down for what it's worth. But very excited to have a candid conversation about his journey, his successes. I won't tell you who just yet. Let me first introduce my co-host, Mike.
Yeah, thank you, Julianne, and great to be here as well. And looking forward to an amazing podcast today with someone who I've seen in the industry who's done excellent work in the group practice and DSO space. And it's going to give a different perspective than a dentist, a doctor, a leader, but a true leader in dentistry. And very much look forward to talking with Brian about his journey, he has influenced and who's influenced him along the way. And I guess let's get to it.
All right. So I am proud to announce that we have the famous, infamous, whatever you want to call it, Brian Colao today in the house. And I'm so excited to have you on the show. So for those of you, if there are any listeners who haven't seen him out and about at things like the conference Dykema and other, such places, Brian is a very, very influential voice in the DSO space. And I won't give you the rundown of all of his accolades because it's lengthy. But I'd love to just introduce you and have you go ahead and give a little introduction yourself on what you're working on, what you're, focusing on right now, because you're all over the map, not to mention your biggest parties. But so welcome, Brian.
Well, thanks, Julianne. Thanks, Mike, for having me here. Very, very kind introduction. I appreciate it. I'm in my 30th year. I hope I look decent on this, but I'm feeling a little older. This is my 30th year doing this. And, for those that don't know, I lead the industry leading Dykema DSO group. We've got 72 professionals or so under me that do, we focus on representing DSOs and other dental organizations. We're in all 50 states, Canada, Europe, Japan, Australia. And, that's one big component of what we do. We also have the largest event in the history of the DSO industry, the Dykema DSO conference. That's in our 12th year. Really, really excited. That'll be August 6th through the 8th this year. And also, I act as an advisor to a lot of companies that want to get into the DSO space and the DSO industry. And as you guys pointed out lately, they keep handing me these influencer awards and stuff. I don't think I knew really, like, if you asked me before COVID, like 5 years ago, like, what is even an influencer? I would have been like, I'm not sure. That's kind of confusing to me. But now, at last count, I've got 6 or 7 of those DSO influencer awards. So I guess that means I'm somewhat of an influencer, whatever that means. But I'm really happy to be here on your show and spend some time with you.
Yeah, you think? I mean, I'd say you're kind of right up there as one of the influencers now. In fact, I haven't talked to you about it yet, but you look so good for your age that we might put you on the cover of our magazine at some point. So just hold that in the back of your mind. We have a magazine called Influence, and you just wait. We'll be talking to you.
We're going to have to Photoshop that one. But I think I will say this. The technology is good enough. They probably can do it, but we're going to have to work on that.
You're all right. I saw you recently. I spoke at the Women in DSO conference, and I graced your presence with walking in the speaker lounge while you were in there, and you were just on the phone, just going at it with your conversations. What is it like being you? I'm curious because, the legal world, this other like life that I don't have any clue what that would be like. Tell me a little bit about what it's like to be Brian Colao.
Well, I mean, it's interesting. I like it. I'm having fun and I enjoy it, but it's hectic. A lot of travel. Like, if somebody always, it's fun when clients or other friends or colleagues call me. They're like, "Well, where have you been?" Because they know the end. Like, so if we were going to go back, like the last 2 weeks, it was like last 3 weeks, really. It was Los Angeles, then it was San Diego, then it was Philadelphia, then it was Cologne, Germany, then we came back here, then it was like Denver. Then it was Miami. Then It was Nashville. And I'm drawing a blank. I think it was Austin and San Antonio, and then Venice, Italy. And then I came back here, and then it was Chicago. And now I'm talking to you because I'm in Dallas. And then I'm going to be in Nashville again Friday and Saturday. And then next week it's Las Vegas. And then I'm hosting an event at the Kentucky Derby. So it'll be Louisville. And then it's back. And then honestly, there's several more, but I lost track after Louisville of where I'm going. I got to pull out I don't have it here, but I'd have to pull out my calendar. So, a lot of travel would be one thing, but I like meeting with people in person. I mean, the Zoom thing was fine during COVID when we were locked down. But if you really want to have meaningful relationships with people, really get to know their business, really understand what's going on, there's no substitute for in-person meetings. And most of my time is having in-person meetings, whether it's DSOs, whether it's group practices, whether it's dental technology companies, whether it's other consultants for the dental space, M&A consultants, I spend a lot of my time meeting with people and helping them come up with solutions.
Well, yeah, Brian, what I was going to say is I agree with you on the face-to-face. Again, I lived through countless COVID Zoom calls, and we still do because out of convenience. But you're right. It's the conversations that happen after you get off stage or there's a presentation where people can actually be authentic and be themselves and talk about the industry, talk about life, talk about elevating things. And obviously you've been, very successful, and the people in the companies that you're around are also very successful. So I do believe that success breeds success, and again, this industry is a great industry to be in. I mean, dentistry is amazing. Being at 18 years and overall 30 in the medical/dental space. So it is a great industry to be in, not only for the success of others that we work with, but obviously for patients. I mean, what this industry does for patients. One thing I do want to say is if you mentioned Las Vegas, so if you will be at Thrive Live next week.
I will. I forgot about that. Yeah, I will be at Thrive.
And I will be there, and I owe you a beverage and or a meal since I took one from you. So I do that. If you're available, I owe you a meal. But regarding that and all the traffic and the hectic thing, we talk about influence, right? And you brought that up on why you're influential, but obviously there's a reason. So what is it that drives you, Brian, and drives you to succeed and to offer up yourself to so many organizations and people, from Women in DSO, which is an amazing organization that Julieanne's a part of, as well as your own company and all those companies that you mentioned that work with? What drives you to inspire them for greatness?
Well, a couple things. One, I remembered where I'm going after Louisville, and that's Toronto, Canada for Women in DSO's global event. So before I answer your question, I want to remind everybody, come on up to Canada. I think it's May 7th for the Women in DSO first time Canadian event, and that's where I'm going after Louisville, and I want everybody to go up there. Yeah, I wanted to mention that. But to answer your question, Mike, I started from the premise, and this is like almost 30 years ago. I was told that, and there's a book called The Go-Giver that I read. I always recommend it if people ask me for, Christmas or birthday gift. Often I'll give them people that have everything and they don't need like a really nice gift. I'll give them that book and say, look, this is the best gift I can give you. And to summarize it, you have to help people and do things for people without expectation of anything in return. And if you can do that, really good things are going to happen. And that's been sort of my philosophy. One of my mentors, Kathleen Titus, had a long and storied career. She's still at Henry Schein now, but she was tremendous mentor to me when I first got into the dental space. But I've been in the space 30 years, but when I really DSOs started to hit, and I spent a lot of time with her, she's been incredible mentor to me. And she always said, you have to do things for people and help people without expectation of return, anything in return. And people say that, oh yeah, we'll do that. No, I mean, sometimes you do it and you get nothing in return, and it's taken a lot of your time. But if you do that, on average, you're going to end up in a really great place. But a lot of folks get discouraged because they'll say, oh, well, Brian said do it and I did it, and I didn't get anything. And I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, that's the whole point. It's not going to be like that forever. And there's going to be tremendous return on the whole, but you have to understand, you have to walk the walk. If you say you're going to do things without expectation in return, that means sometimes you're going to spend time and you're going to help people and you're not going to get any immediate benefit from it. But in the long term or the long game, it's going to be tremendous. And that's that was my core philosophy when I got into, the dental space. I have a very specialized skill set. I understand legally pretty much everything about DSOs, group practices, and dentistry in general. And I definitely have skills that can help people, but not everybody is going to be in the market for that right away. And if particularly anybody that's ever hired lawyers knows we're not particularly cheap. So it's not really something that everybody in the general public can just sign up for. So there's going to be a select group of people that are going to be in the market for that. But you got to be nice to everybody, and you got to help everybody, and you got to do the best you can for everybody. And on the long haul, it's really going to, you're going to get much more back than you gave in the long run.
I have to chime in there. Okay, so I love, first of all, fabulous book. Second of all, it's really interesting because what you don't know behind the scenes is that I saw you first out there on stage, running around, doing your thing. But then somebody in particular came to me and shared how impactful you were personally in their life and how grateful they were for you. Amal. And he and I've collaborated, super good guy. And he shared a little bit about you that basically was this validation factor, right? For me, that I wanted to know you. And so it's not because I wanted to know you because you were big and on stage. It had everything to do with his testimony, basically, about you.
Well, I mean, take that example. That's a wonderful story. Amal's become one of my best friends in all of dentistry. And this is Amal Nurgurkar, CEO of Patient Prism. And also he's been elected certain influencing awards on social media and other stuff. A great guy for anybody to get to know in the dental industry. But his story, he was doing like a very early version before COVID. This is like 2017. I remember it because one of my beloved I liked had this cat. Her name was Sassafras, and she passed away. I mean, I remember because the cat was dying and having to be put down, and I was so upset. And then here comes Amal, a guy I didn't even know, out of nowhere. Hey, can you come down to Tampa? And I'd love to film a video with you and all this other stuff. Couldn't have been a worse time. But he really had a dental show that he was putting on. He wanted me to come down there, and I didn't know very much about him, but I think a couple other people said, look, he's a nice guy, and I said, all right, I'll do it. And basically I went down there and spent the better part of 2 days with them all. And, he didn't have a lot of, high profile guests yet. Probably at that time, I was probably his highest profile guest. I mean, he's done terrific since then, but, back then, it was a big deal for him to have me come down there. And I gave him almost 2 full days. He couldn't have been nicer to me. I think he took me out to eat. Unlike Mike, he took me out to eat. He bought me drinks and stuff. It was real nice to me. But I still had to give him 2 days down there. And I had to go down there, and I did it. And I filmed those videos, and he, like you said, I mean, it made a huge impact. He's told me, we joke about it now, but he's told me over and over again what a big deal that was to him when I did that initially. And, there were people that helped me in this industry and got nothing in return when I asked them, hey, can I meet this person? Can I be introduced to this CEO or this, chief financial officer or this consultant? And they were very generous, and they did that. And I always remembered that we have a wonderful culture in the dental industry. We really do. Our law firm does a lot of other verticals. We do a lot of other medical and other verticals, and people don't treat each other nearly as well as everybody treats everybody, in the dental industry. And people did some really nice things for me. I'm not sure I paid it back. Some of them I did. Some of them I don't think I paid it back to them, and they did it. And what they've always said whenever I see them somewhere, and I'm like, I can't thank you enough. They say, do it for somebody else. Don't worry about paying us back, but do it for somebody else. And Amal's a great example of that. But I've tried hard when asked, to always try to help people when I can.
And Brian, that is so refreshing. And I agree with you. The dental space is a unique space. I came from a specialty pharmaceutical field, and before that, healthcare apparel. So I've been in the healthcare dental space pretty much all my adult career. And I agree. The dental space, dentists in general, dental manufacturing, it is a very tight group. It's different. It is different, and it's enjoyable. And I agree with you also about paying it forward. You may not be able to pay it back or to the side, but again, it's always to pay it forward. And it's just who you are and what you are. And I know that's what we built our company out of, Julieanne and myself, and this podcast about influential dental and about that everyone can succeed. It's not a transactional interaction, right? It's not you win, I lose, or I win, you lose. It's no, we can all succeed and do better through our connections, through what we contribute in this space is ultimately into the patients. And so that's refreshing to hear from you directly. And the people that know you know that, obviously, but now our listeners are going to know that as well. Whether you're, like you said, the manufacturer, you're an attorney, it's just about the person you are and about giving back. So that is refreshing, and people
I
need
mean,
to.
it's all we have when we go, right? Is
Yeah.
our reputation and what we did. It's all we have. I mean, you might say, I made a lot of money and I did this, but you can't take that with you. All you have, the only thing, and I've been starting, like I'm, 54, maybe that's not that old. Everything's relative. If you're 65, you think I'm young, but if you're 35, maybe you think I'm old. I don't know. But the only thing I can say is as we get older and we start to think about, I love doing this. I'm going to do this for a while, but you start to think, can't quite do it forever. You start to see things. And it's like I said, after 50, like it used to be you go to the doctor when you're 20 and 30, and they're like, oh, everything looks great. And it's like, we going to be here long? No, about 10 minutes and you're done. After 50, you go, they're like, no, you got to sit down. We got to talk about this. We got to do that. And it's like, I got places to go and it's been like 2 hours and they're still talking to me. Those things just happen. And you start to think about, your mortality as you get older. And the only thing we can take that really will last after you're gone is your reputation and what you accomplish. So what we do now, possibly if you do it right, has a chance to make a legacy that people will remember you when you're gone. And to me, that's become much more important as I've got older than, making an extra dollar or winning some award somewhere. It's what are people going to say after you're gone, and how long are they going to keep talking about you?
I was
In a
a little
positive way,
I was a
hopefully.
little worried whether or not we were going to get you to open up and talk today, but I got to tell you, there are so many things you're saying that are nuggets that I absolutely love. There's so many things I could literally talk to you or listen to you talk for 3 hours and do 3 episodes. But first of all, it's just funny, the whole doctor thing. And, they get me when they ask me, when I go to visit the doctor, whether or not I'm depressed. And I'm like, that didn't used to be a common question. That's an every time question now. And I'm like, well, who isn't?
Well, no, I appreciate it because every birthday that goes by, it's like I think I'm mostly keeping a positive attitude most of the year. But like when the birthday comes by, it's like, oh, wow. I mean, it's like, it's like another year. So I think I understand. I think we got to just you can't stop it. We got to just keep moving forward. And I feel like, I hang around a lot of really talented young people in dentistry. It keeps me young, keeps me excited. I got 2 baby nieces. One is, well, they would argue that they're babies now. They just turned 7 and 12 and they would get upset. But they've been in my life since they were born. They keep me young. So I got a lot of things that keep me young. But yeah, I mean, when the birthdays come around, we're not getting any younger. So I understand why they're asking that question.
Yeah, well, I got to tell you, so I have explored death and mortality since I was pretty young, because I grew up on a really contaminated property. I was told I would die young, and so it's interesting because so when I was probably, oh my gosh, maybe 20 and maybe even sooner, I started exploring this concept of, well, what if my death date is 1 year out? What if it's 5 years out? I did a TED talk on it. I'm just a blast to be around because I, love death. But anyway, but what it did for my life is because I was able to imagine all the way out. I was like, oh, what if I had 20 years to live? Like that seemed like forever when I was told I could get sick, but I wanted to have a meaningful life. Right. And so so I was a strategist by nature, and I would imagine my potential death date and all these different variables. And I reverse engineered how I wanted to live my life in every single scenario. And bottom line was I knew that everything boiled down to when I got to the death date, who were the people I surrounded myself with? Like all I cared about was, the only thing that mattered were the people in my life. And so I've lived my life that way for a long time because of that experience, right? But not everybody does that. A lot of people wait until they're in their 50s. Not saying you waited. But and then lawyers get a bad rap, right? And so
And they should. They deserve it a lot. A lot of the people, and I try to lecture them. I walk down the hallway when I see people acting like lawyers, and I'm like, you can't, we're not going to do that. We're going to be sort of special. And I'll tell you this, to your question, I waited too long. I mean, I think I got the memo, and I feel like, say, easily the last 10, 12, 13 years, I feel like I've done that meaningful thing. But, that would have put me at like 42 or 43 before I started doing stuff well, not that I didn't do some things, but where every day I wanted to say, it is going to be a meaningful day. No matter what happens, something meaningful is going to happen today. It's been 13, 14 years of that. So I lived a lot of my life not doing that and wasting a lot of days where meaningful things didn't occur. It's not too late. And I'm glad that, like I said, the last 13 years or so, I've been very pleased with it. But, the big mistake, is you don't want to wait too long. You don't want to wait too long. And,
Mike,
And
wait 1 sec, Mike. So I just have to chime in on this. This is the last thing. So when you've done this for as long as I've done, where you imagine your death date, I'm going to just tell you, I wake up every day and just I'm in awe of even aging, because it's interesting. So you might find that as you get older, what's going to happen is you're going to start to experience it differently, and you're going to just be awed by things, and it becomes more meaningful and less scary to me as I get older. Actually, I'm one of those people who I'm like, I watch people around me doing all the work and fighting aging, and I'm just like, bring it on. I'm so grateful to be alive, and so you become more and more in the moment, I feel like, and that's really, powerful. It's powerful in different ways if you look at it that way, right? But I love everything you're sharing because it's so slice of life, and
I
I
mean,
think
as soon as
everybody
I
can relate.
turned 50, if this is like basketball, I felt like there was a shot clock that came up. In 20s and 30s, it was like you got time. It's like whatever. But when I turned 50, that shot clock came up, and I don't know when it gets to zero. Only God knows when it gets to zero, but it's counting down. And I feel like, hey, I got to accomplish stuff. There's a lot of things I want to do, and I have to accomplish them, and they're really important to me, and I'm not going to put it off. I mean, that's what I try to do.
And Brian, what I was going to say, you brought up shot clock, and again, thank you for bringing Coach Krzyzewski last year to the Dykema meeting. That was amazing. I got to shake his hand, get a picture with him. That was very inspiring, and also your interaction with him. So shout out to your event and what you bring to the table. And I agree, if anyone hasn't been to the Dykema conference, I highly recommend it.
We got John McEnroe this year. If anybody's a tennis fan, they can
Yeah.
come see John McEnroe.
Yeah, this will be my third one this year. I'm going to attend, and I highly recommend it. But your philosophy and how you think is amazing. Obviously, law and is pretty much black and white, right? You're either adhering to the law, you're not. How to work around it.
There's a lot of gray in healthcare, though. I have to
Yes.
tell you, there's a lot of gray, and there's a lot of areas, given that at least the DSO industry is still relatively young. A lot
Right.
of industries are hundreds of years old, and there's been law and books going on forever. When you go to DSOs and some of the creative models and things we come up with, it's not always clear cut. I mean, there are guidelines, but it's not always clear cut. And that's why, I think part of a lot of what I do is, art, not science, in as much as being here 30 years and just seeing, what things regulators or others take seriously, what things, they'll let you slide a little more. Even the law might say this, but the way it's interpreted is a little different. And you just have to, there's a lot more art than science than people think in healthcare in general, and particularly in the DSO industry.
Mike, you may have had more on that thought, but then I do have some questions I want
And
to.
this is how this works, Brian. She hijacks a lot of the questions
go.
anyway. So no, I'm just teasing you, Julieanne.
No,
Go right ahead.
finish your thought if you want.
No, what I was going to say is about your philosophy and so on. And what I was saying is the law is not necessarily black and white. It's more gray, like you said. But your philosophy is as a person, right? A deeper thinker, someone that wants to enjoy their life, wants to do right by others. How do you bring that into how you practice your profession with these multi-million, billion-dollar companies and entities in the DSO space?
my philosophy has always been, and this is where I counsel a lot of young lawyers here, right? I tell everybody, look, I'm not a priest, okay? I mean, I try to live by a good life and a nice philosophy, but when it comes to business, not personal, I'm not a priest. Well, I'm not a priest anyway, but I'm not a priest, and I don't judge anybody. And a lot of times, people have good reason to do things that other people might frown upon in a vacuum, but there's really good reasons to do them. And I'm not here to judge anybody. I'm not here to lecture anybody, but I am here to be a counselor and advisor. And I've done more of this, at least in the DSO space, than almost anybody else. I've seen what works. I see what doesn't work. I see what people get in trouble for. I see things where maybe technically you could argue it's not proper, but nobody ever enforces it. And, it's built in, to what people do, and I counsel people. I counsel people and I tell them, look, this is what compliance, 100% compliance might look like, but it's up to you as to what you're able to do. And I'm not here to judge you. And if, I tell you, you're going to do this, but you decide to do this and something bad happens, you'll never hear, I told you so. I'm not here to lecture. I'm just here to kind of continue to help. And sometimes that happens, people get over the years, get into situations where they have no choice but to do a particular thing or something else. Some people would judge them, but they have no choice but to do it. And maybe that particular thing they did resulted in some issues that got to be cleared up. But I'm not here to lecture or judge anybody. I'm just here to help. And that means if you take my advice, I'll help. If you don't take my advice and then you want to take it later or something else happens, I'm just here to help.
I love that. So I just resonate so much. I always say I'm not the morality police, right? I'm not here to decide what what things should be, right? There's maybe not even a right or wrong sometimes, in my opinion, but I do believe in integrity to ourselves with what we're trying to accomplish. Like if you make a commitment to yourself to give, live a good life, then keep that commitment that you have to yourself. But I want to go back further, like way back, like what makes little Brian tick? Like way back in the day, who were you and what made you want to go into this field? Like what's your personal journey look like way back before all of this?
Well, if you asked me at 12 or 13 what I wanted to do, I would have told you I wanted to be an Olympic wrestler. And I wrestled from the time I was 4 years old, until, college, and wrestled in college and the whole thing, but it just wasn't. I think wrestling has defined who I am because it's stingy and generous. It's very stingy in that only like that tiny, tiny fraction of people are going to be Olympic gold medalists in wrestling. Most of us will ultimately fail at it. And I won a lot more matches than I ever lost, but in the context of being like an Olympic gold medalist, I failed miserably at it and was nowhere near, that point. But the skills that you get, kind of having to cut weight, having to maintain your weight, having to be disciplined, having to compete through all kinds of pain and injuries and other things, having to have the courage to go on a mat across from somebody that wants to kick your butt, like really big, got really bad things in mind for you. And you got to walk out there. And maybe as an adult, we make our choices. But when you're 6 years old and you got to walk out for the first time, and I could be home watching cartoons, but instead of watching Scooby-Doo, I got to go out on this mat. And this guy wants to, another 6-year-old, but this guy wants to kick my butt. I mean, it's very, very daunting, but if you can make it through that, I believe. And there's other sports where people will say something similar, but I'm partial to wrestling because that was my background. If you can make it through that, you can make it through everything. But to answer your question, the Olympic gold medalist was not going to happen despite my best efforts. And I had to figure out something else to do. And the best thing I could think about that was at least some type of one-on-one competition, not physical, but, in professional competition was, being a trial lawyer, going out and trying cases and, representing your client against another lawyer that was representing the other side and trying to win. Now, nothing has come close to winning a wrestling match. match. You win a wrestling match out there in front of an arena with thousands of people. I mean, it's like gladiators, like Rome. Nothing has come even close. It's probably the difference. I don't use, drugs or anything, but it's probably the difference between like heroin versus like, a shot of whiskey or something. Somebody would be like, yeah, the whiskey's okay, but we wish we could really, do that. I mean, I can't speak from firsthand experience, but, something like that, or like in today's world, like, codeine versus fentanyl or something like, it's a big difference.
And
so,
that's our show, folks.
Yeah, that's it. We're going to be
the
done.
walk
But,
away lesson. I love it.
Don't do drugs. No one should do drugs. But the point I'm making is there's a big difference between some of these things. And to me, it was a really big difference between, winning, a wrestling match and winning a trial in court. It was nowhere near the same type of adrenaline rush, but it was enough of a something to keep me in the game and keep doing it. But after a while, I very early on, I discovered dentistry. And from the first year I was a lawyer on, I had some dental stuff I was doing, but maybe it was like 5 or 10%. Then it was 20%. Then it was 25. Then 10, 15 years in, it was 50%. Then it was 70%. And now it's virtually 100% of what I do. And that really, brought me joy to be able to do that.
So what I was going to say, Ryan, so you like to compete. I was nowhere near the wrestler you were. I did it for 1 year, 8th grade, and it was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life is to be a wrestler and to go on the mat and run the circuit and cut. Yeah. Anyway, so shout out to all the wrestlers out there. I played collegiate football, but wrestling in 8th grade was the hardest thing I've ever done. So
what we say in wrestling is no timeouts.
Yeah,
no substitutions. You just got to keep going. I don't want to get into it with Mike about football versus wrestling, but what we used to always say to the basketball players and the football players, there are no timeouts, no substitutions. You can't sub somebody in.
I couldn't cut it. I couldn't cut it in wrestling. One and done, 8th grade, but I've experienced it. So, and I've had friends that have wrestled. So kudos to you. So yes, I can see where that competition leads into, and I have friends that are lawyers as well on the trial and that. So I hear you. To go even further back, Julie, talk about, any mentors or coaches or influencers and kind of what you learned from them or a situation, whether it was a teacher or something. I'm just curious from your perspective. You have the internal drive, right? And a lot of athletes I talk to know if it's that, right? You're either born with it or you're not. But there's also those coaches or people in your life that, okay, I'm going to now take it to the next level. I'm going to remember that along my journey. Could you share with our listeners and us maybe some of those people along the way?
Yeah, it's going to be high school and college coaches in wrestling. I mean, really, before I got to dentistry and then I got some other mentors, but, like my college coach, Mark Gumbel, and I had a real pleasure at a DEO meeting. He appeared on stage with me and I said, look, I walked off the mat with him the last time in 1992 and I want to walk off, maybe not a mat, but I want to walk off, and the DEO let me put him on stage and I gave a presentation. He came on. It was right before COVID. It was November of 19 and he walked off the stage with me. And that was a very special moment to me. But, what he said to me, he said a lot of things that were really, really helpful over the years. I'll give you a few of them. I don't know. One, he says, plenty of time to rest when you're dead. That was one that sunk in. So, and really, that's how I live my life. There'll be a time for eternal rest probably, but while I'm up, I'm going to be doing a lot of things. That was one thing that he said. Another thing that he said was worrying changes nothing but yourself. And he was absolutely right. And there's no use, and it's not productive being worrying or afraid. You just kind of got to proceed forward. Something else that he said to me that stuck with me all these years is, you don't have to do this, you get to do this. And he was absolutely right. And that meant going out and wrestling and competing and doing all those hard things. You get to run up a hill at 2 a.m. Okay. And that's how I take this. I love what I'm doing now. I love, counseling all these dental organizations and doing this. And what I said earlier of all those cities I rattled off where I was, I don't have to do it. I get to do it. Asked a normal person, did you go to LA, San Diego, Philadelphia, Cologne, Germany, Vegas? No, they're going to say no. I did. Okay. Yeah, the travel got a little tough, but I enjoyed it. And it was really, really cool to be able to have the opportunity to inspire people. And that's what I feel like the latter half of my career. Early on, you worked for other people. They told you what to do. You try to keep your head above water. Maybe in the middle of it, you try to just get your work done in a real competent way and have people at least be pleased that they pay your bill, that you did a good job. Now that's not enough. I want to inspire people if I can. I do. And I don't want to be presumptuous, but they keep handing me these awards and telling me I am. And when they do, that makes me feel like I'm accomplishing something. Like like there's more to this than just doing a good job, sending a bill and somebody pays the bill. You can actually inspire people. And what Julieanne said earlier, that Amal said, and there's been others, and I get notes, and around Christmas time, they send me all these bottles of alcohol and all this stuff. And people will say, often I'll forget, you really did me a favor, or you really helped me, or what you said here really meant something to me. And that's how I'm keeping score for this later half of my life. I want as many people as possible to say, you inspired me, or you made a difference, or you helped me when somebody else wasn't helping me, and you really, helped me move forward. That's how I'm keeping score going forward.
I love everything that you're saying. And I don't know if people tell you often like what their favorite quality about you is. Do people tell you what it is that they love about you specifically?
Sometimes.
What do they
I
tell
don't
you?
have a list anywhere.
I'm curious.
Sometimes.
What do you hear?
That I tell it like it is.
Yep.
That I don't sugarcoat it. That's what I hear. But even people that don't like me say, look, we got to respect it, that you're honest and you do what you say and you say what you mean and things like that. I've had even like other lawyers that I know hate me because they're always on the other side say, but we can always count on you to be honest and tell it like it is. So, that's what most people say. Others have said things like we're saying, like, you spent time, you were generous, you gave us time that, other people wouldn't. Some people say that.
And for me, it's absolutely hands down the authenticity. Like, I don't feel so. Your authenticity gives me permission to be authentic. You know what I'm saying? It's like I'm fearless in
and
your
the lack
presence.
of judgment. I'm not going to judge you either.
Yeah, and it's so refreshing because I think so many people are walking around putting so much pressure on themselves to package themselves in such a
I hate
way.
this social media thing. I'm big on LinkedIn because LinkedIn's a business thing. I love LinkedIn, but I'm not big. I'm so glad. It started when I was picking juries and people would look you up as the attorney. So I never got on Facebook when that was the thing. I've not gone on this TikTok, Instagram thing. Never did any of that stuff. And, I don't see that changing for me, but these young people that's their whole thing. And they get on this. It puts so much extra pressure on them because you're competing arguably with millions of people. When you grew up, back in our time, you might say, oh, I'm competing with the people in my class. That's 30 or 40 people, or maybe the people at my school, a couple hundred people. But when you turn into these like Instagram, TikTok, Facebook type thingies, there's millions of people, you're competing against. And I did a thing one time, that just to prove the whole social media point. I've got this picture, and I've referenced this on stage, and I'll tell you this for 30 seconds. I got this picture of me in Rockefeller Center, purportedly in New York City, and the tree is behind me, and I got this smile like, and it looks like this is an idyllic Christmas thing, and the guys in Rockefeller Center, and this is wonderful. You want to know the truth? The reason I got that picture without anybody blocking it. There was the most rancid, disgusting dumpster on earth next to me. I was smelling the worst smells you will ever smell. It was so difficult for me to smile during that picture. You could cut the stench with the air. And I referenced that with people. I said, look at this picture of this idyllic Christmas setting, and this guy's having a fairy tale Christmas. No, it was most disgusting, like 45 seconds of my life standing next to the dumpster. But people that looked at that picture would never guess. But that's the problem with some of this social media stuff. To me, you put a false narrative or this contrived, staged sort of narrative, and it's not always like that. Maybe sometimes it is. Maybe sometimes the tree's behind you and you're smelling gingerbread and it's great. But more often than not, that's not the way it is. And I feel like
Mine's
social
all
media
gingerbread. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, I agree with you. And again, that leads to more pressure. And with, AI and everything else, what is real and what's not real. And that's why I guess personal one-on-one conversation, you can't fake that. But anything online, pictures and things, what is real, what's not real. And I think in the dentistry space, and Julieanne can attest to this, and we've heard it, a lot of issues with mental health with dentists, and I'm sure with organizations, suicide rates and everything else, is everyone's trying to keep up with the Joneses. Just worry about yourself and your business, and the rest of it will take care of themselves. But it's just with social media, it just takes it to the next level. So you
And you can
stating
put
that is
these
awesome.
filters on, and you look like a supermodel, but because you put the filters on or whatever, and it's just, I get worried about it. When I say young people, I mean I'm certainly worried about teenagers and kids, but when I say young, I mean
Yeah.
30-year-old dentists, 35-year-old. I mean, it's just they're adults, but they're young, and they grew up in the social media age, and it's rougher out there in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I'm going to chime in on this. So, certainly this is a concern, right? Because we know it's having an effect on people and the way people are being raised. It's definitely affecting adults as well. Nobody's really immune from it. I would, it's interesting. You were talking about the Olympic, dream earlier. And one of my clients, I private coach high achievers, mostly in the dental space, but I happen to have a client who's an Olympic athlete as well. And, I've referenced him a couple times because you're going to see him on stages soon as well. And just an incredible person. But talk about a journey that he's been on to get to the Olympics. And he literally, and I mentioned this once on another episode, but he literally had to pack his bags the day of the opening ceremonies when he had made it into the Olympics. He was a front runner, expected to win. And over a doping violation, which had to do with a hair loss medication that he had been using, had never been on the ban list before. And suddenly that year it was. And he had to walk away. But he tells his story with this just crazy, amazing amount of stress that went on. And then the moments where things went well. But he says at the end of the day, do you think my life has been made up of just this dream of that 2 minutes? Or do you think it's all about the journey and all the messiness and how you respond to everything in between, right? And I think he's going to be a really interesting voice, because I look at social media and this idea that we're putting everybody on this like this sort of platform, like they're so amazing, right? And we do that with Olympic athletes, but then you find out that they're so depressed. He has story of person after person who committed suicide after they won the Olympics.
You have to allow. I've spent a lot of time studying this and talking to people that wrestled back in the day when I wrestled, but they were better and they went to the Olympics and did other things. You got to allow for an exit or a steam, like an escape valve on the steam. There was a documentary in wrestling that I don't expect anybody, to know too much about this, but it was a documentary about a competitor in wrestling. They made it, and all this person thought they ever were going to do was be the Olympic gold medalist. And they were far better than me, and they got there. And the bottom line is they lost in the Olympic trials. And I mean, it was crazy. Like the particular person I'm talking about, like you see the video, and they fell down and they had to scrape them off the floor, and then they got up and they ran out of the arena with their shirt off, and they were climbing a fence to, like, we don't know where they were going. They were trying to get out of the parking lot, and they had to grab them and pull them back down. And then the particular person, after they might get like calm for a second, then they went in their car with their shirt off, left their wallet, left everything, and drove their car straight back across the country to where they lived, and then went to I think Alaska or something for 3 months in a hunting cabin. And it's like the lesson that some of the wisest coaches in wrestling said when they were commenting in this documentary is, you've got to I know that everybody wants to win, and certainly you should do everything in your power to win and try your best, but in your brain you've got to allow for the possibility of an off ramp or something. And maybe it's only 1%, but you've got to allow for the possibility that, look, this may not work out. And if it doesn't, this is what I'm going to do. Because when the moral that I got, and I've always used this as a takeaway, is when you only allow for one outcome in your brain, and you've conditioned yourself, and only that one thing, that you've allowed for doesn't happen. Like, be Olympic gold medalist, of which there's like 1 in a billion. Okay. So what's the like 1 in a billion? You could stand out on a golf course and you'll get struck by lightning several times more than you'll be an Olympic gold medalist, because it's like 1 in a billion. And when that 1 in a billion thing doesn't happen to you, you can't, you can't be so that, like, literally you commit suicide, or you become mentally ill, or you can't function. You drive to Alaska for the next 6 months in a cabin and lock yourself in there. You can't allow for that. You've got to allow for exit ramps.
So
When I see it,
this particular guy that I'm talking about did go into a deep, dark depression after
yeah.
this, but then because of a mentor, because of one mentor, he came back, and not only did he compete again and become number one in the world, but then he went on to the Olympics, and he said he has never been more proud of anything than winning fifth at the Olympics, when he could have been so devastated, but just because he was first slammed, because first he took it in such a terrible way, that it gave him, but everything boiled down to a mentor who said, wait a second, get over it. Like, I'm not saying that wasn't his message, but.
Well, I mean, you got these people, Julieanne, they're 22, 23, these swimmers, especially gymnasts, whatever it is, they're 21 years old, they're 18, they're 20. You have an entire life ahead of you. I mean, like what I tell, if I'm mentoring, and I do mentor some, wrestlers in college and some Olympic type, and I say, listen, I said, nobody goes to law school to be the dental guy. Okay. If you ask me, like, nobody, like, this has been the greatest career, like, ever that I could ever hope for. But let me back up, because you wanted to back up on the show. Nobody goes to law school to be the dental guy. When I was 21 in law school, if you said make a list of 100 things you might be when you get out of here, the dental lawyer would not have appeared anywhere on that list of 100 things. And it's been the greatest thing that could ever happen to me being in this industry. So
Exactly.
that's what I would say to these other guys. You might think it was going to be all about the Olympic gold medal, but you're 22 or 21. For God's sakes, you got your whole life ahead of you. There's so much you can do that might be the most rewarding thing you ever did in your life.
This is like this in the dental space, in the dental industry, in the DSO space for individuals, because again, there's so much pressure, right? Whether it's debt out of school, or if it's working in a DSO or for a private practice, and you're having issues and you're dealing with teams and staff. It is okay, like you said, to find a mentor, to find that valve, like you talked about, and to rely on others, rely on coaches like Julieanne, or companies that can help you get out. You don't have to internalize everything. You have people, and that's obviously with the great coach and great things in sports. You have those, and the coaches that get that and get the personal side of it, can take them to the next level. And I want to mind time, because we do have a little bit more time. And Brian, this has been amazing, and I would love to talk sports, and we'll definitely have you on again, and we'll talk. Thrive Live and others. But I want to circle back to women in DSO.
Yeah.
I have a daughter. I'm very proud of her. She's an independent woman. She's in the law business as well. I want her to go to law school. She's a senior paralegal, but I'll have to talk to you, and maybe you can mentor her. But women in DSO, I think that's a great organization that you're involved with, being on the board of directors. Julieanne's involved with. I'd love to share some time that we have left talking about that organization, what that means for you, for Dykema, and your involvement. And then, Julieanne, maybe you can piggyback on that. But if you could talk a little bit about that organization, and then we can kind of wrap it up after that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a founding board member, and it's been the professional highlight of my career, okay? And the story I always tell everybody is when they called me, Kathleen Titus, Dr. Aman Carr called me, and they said, will you be a part of this right before COVID, like 2019? And I was hearing it. It was like woman in DSO, and we're going to do all this. And I said, well, yeah, I mean, where do I write the check? And they're like, no, that's not we might take some money, but that's not what we're talking about. And I was like, well, like, what could you be talking about? Like, what could I do? Like, what are you talking about? And they're like, well, no, we need you to be involved. Like, you're going to show up. And I'm like, you like with all these women? Like, I'd be like, what am I going to say? Like, literally, that's how it went. And they said, no, yes. And I was the only man first. I was a founding board members. There were 8 women and me. And they said, the industry, we're trying to provide access opportunities, mentorship for all, the women in the DSO industry, but it's mostly like the guys are in charge, and you're one of them that's in charge, and we want your perspective in the room. And I said, okay. And like you might imagine, I said stupid stuff. I stumbled. They were correcting me at the first couple board meetings of maybe my perspective was off, or I misunderstood something. But after a while, it really became to be out of that comfort zone a little bit and gain somebody else's perspective. Like, I think Kathleen Titus or somebody said to me when I said, well, I'm going to be like the only guy with 8 women. And she said to me, now you know how we feel. We go into a room all the time, and we're the only woman, and there's all these men. How about it? So get over it. And I was like, well, okay. And I sat there, and after a while, it really became an incredible highlight for me because I learned perspectives and things that I wouldn't ever have thought about, out of my comfort level. And it made me relate so much better to all the talented women that work on my team. First of all, it made me think about every time I'm hiring, is there an opportunity to get, a talented woman in here? And I started to think about that. And we hired a lot of women in my group as a result of that. Second, I appreciated their perspectives that we want to have diversity of perspective. And I've had numerous times, I've talked about this on stage at Women in DSO, where we would sit there and we'd be in a room and I'd say, okay, we got to make a decision. What are we going to do? The guys jump in and they're like, we decisively, confidently, this is what we got to do. And that's what we're going to do. And candidly, like, it sounded okay to me. And I'm like, well, all right. But I look around and, either the women will speak up or I'll call on them and I'll say, well, are they right? What do we think? And they'll just calmly say, I wouldn't do that because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And by the time they're done, I'm like, thank God, like, you're here, because we were about to do one of the, which I actually thought made sense, is actually one of the dumbest things I've ever seen. And that diversity of perspective is just so important. So in any decisions just about that I make around here that are important decisions where you want input from a lot of different people, I always include, first of all, I've hired a lot. So I got a lot of women around that a lot of talented women that I'm surrounded with. And second, I always, include them in real important, decision making, maybe not what I'm going to eat for lunch, but really important decision making that we make around here. I always make sure I get their perspective. Some of the videos we show at Dykema and other things, I always make sure, that they look at it. That's a good thing to do in general. But in an industry like dentistry that's dominated by women, I think it's absolutely essential. I mean, I would have never thought of this before, but now the way my brain thinks is, how ridiculous and silly is it to me to think I'm going to make a presentation to an industry that's completely dominated by women without at least consulting with some of the talented women on my team to make sure the message is going to resonate. I mean, it seems real easy now, but these things were not obvious, several years ago.
I love it. And thanks for bringing up this topic, Mike. I think it's amazing. I think their organization has been fabulous. And I am grateful and beyond humbled to be asked to speak at Dykema for them at their mentorship breakfast.
Yeah.
And
we're looking forward to that.
Yeah.
And Julieanne, we're going to get you involved more, in our big event. So those that listen to this, that come to Dykema, Julieanne's going to have a bigger presence this year. We've got her in Women in DSO. I think the mentorship breakfast, and I think she's got a lot of value to add and a really good inspirational message there. But you're going to see more of her.
Love that. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I really love what you shared. I think it goes both ways because we've seen also these trends where women were coming out attacking men in a lot of cases about things and so much with validity, but then it almost shifted where you have a lot of men on edge too. And so I think it goes, across
one
the board,
point,
right?
Julieanne, about Women in DSO. I know we're almost out of time, but one point about Women in DSO is they don't judge people there. Because that was the only thing I asked when they asked me. I said, I'll go do this, but you're going to have to cut me some slack and you're going to have to cut all the other guys some slack. We're going to, get this thing straightened out, but you can't judge people. A lot of people are doing it wrong. You can't judge them. And that's the thing I like about Women in DSO. That it's not judgment. It's sort of like, this is where we need things to be. And we're here to help, by the way, because that was a rule also that one of my coaches, my high school wrestling coach, said, you're not allowed to complain unless you got the solution or you have an idea. And that's sort of where Women in DSO is. We might say, hey, we're going to complain a little bit, but we got the solution and we're going to help you implement it. We're not just going to sit there and complain that things are not as they should be.
1,000%. I 100% agree with you. 1,000% agree, whatever. I don't do percentages well, but the point is that I literally appreciate when anybody comes to the table with a solution. Even when I'm doing elite team trainings or anything, people come to me afterwards and they're like, okay, I have this problem. How do I solve it? I'm like, well, get your team involved and have them come with solutions. You don't need to hear the complaint anymore. You know the problem. So, and Women in DSO has done this really well. You see it at their events. It's represented very well by women, but certainly men as well. And they're welcomed. I've never heard any sort of murmuring of judgment in a way that is negative at these events. Mike, I don't know how many of these events you've been to.
Yeah, no, I've been to some, and I was involved in Vista, had some as well for women in leadership and so on, and participated and would encourage all men to hear what Brian's saying, and you, Julieanne, as well. It's not a judgment. It's about enlightening and learning, and a more diverse think tank, and the best qualified people are the ones that need to provide it, and we need to hear from all different people to make the best decisions, and especially in dentistry, as Brian said, predominantly is women driven. So yes, on both sides. So I agree with you.
I mean, as a leader, any day of the week, if somebody comes in and says, "Look, I'd like us to do things a little differently, and here's exactly how to do it, and here's why it's important," I'll take that all day. I'll welcome them into my office, buy them lunch, whatever. But if they're just like, "You're stupid, I don't like the way you're doing it," or "That's dumb," or what, it's just not, or, it just doesn't get as well received.
Yeah, the whole world goes around better if we all take responsibility. I kid you not, it's something that we all can live by. I know we have to wrap up because we're out of time, and we have to be mindful of your time. But it's been more than a pleasure. I think we're going to see you at Thrive Live. Is that
Yeah.
correct? I'm speaking at that, so I look forward to seeing you. Are you speaking or not?
I am. There's a DSO track at Thrive Live, which is
Oh,
a little
perfect.
different than the main dentistry track. But yes, I'm leading the DSO track. I'm speaking, and there's a panel and some other things on the
Amazing. I
DSO
spoke
track.
at the DSO track last year. I will come see you speak because is it the day, like the first day, or when is it
I
at Thrive?
believe it's the 30th that I'm
Okay,
speaking.
so I'm gonna
Yep,
we'll
yep,
make sure we come in and hear you speak. That'll be
absolutely. Yeah.
awesome, and then you can see Mike's beautiful face in person. After the Vegas party you guys all had. But
Yeah.
anyway, we'll keep coming back to that. But any last words of wisdom that it will just like open it up, because you've had so many things that you've said. It's so candid. It's so refreshing beyond description to have somebody be this open. And any last words for our listeners? The people who listen to this show, it's everybody. It's people coming out of school all the way up to very influential people. I mean, it's everybody in the dental profession. And so anything that you might want to share with our listeners before we wrap up today?
I mean, to me, we have a limited time on this earth, and let's make the best use of it. I mean, just to wrap it up, that's sort of it. I mean, let's make as many interactions as possible meaningful. I mean, you're not going to be 100%. You're going to have one or two where you're like, "Yeah, wish I could have that back." But as many interactions as humanly possible, let's make them as meaningful as we can, because we've got a limited time on the earth.
It's amazing. That's going to be our sound bite for this episode, and for
Yes.
every other one probably. Mike, anything from you?
No, Brian, I thank you for this cadence as well. This has mostly been able to interact. I look forward to interacting with you more in the future, and your continued success in the DSO space or the dental space, because it's needed. And it's good to see someone, a good guy who's a lawyer. I have other friends that are lawyers that are good guys as well. But I think our listeners get a whole new perspective of what you bring to the table. And obviously, your events are best of the best. So again, I tell people to go see those. And again, really, truly appreciate your time and your perspective in the sports analogy. And it's nice to know that you're a wrestler as well. And Julieanne, thank you for this wonderful episode as well. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for
Thanks.
the show, Mike. And a shout out again to Amol at Patient Prism for making me have such a deep intrigue in getting to know you better, Brian. So it really, it makes the world go round. So thank you again.
Well, thank you. I love being here. I really appreciate it.
Take care.
Appreciate it.